Thanks for coming today. We're going to start with the flag salute. Everyone please rise. Hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Next, we'll do roll call. So we have Commissioner Khoury.
Yes, sir.
Present? Excellent. Commissioner Durney.
Present.
New Vice Chair Hatley.
Present.
Commissioner Kassenbaum.
Present.
Excellent. I believe we have a quorum. It says on the agenda we're going to elect new chair and vice chair, but that was completed. I think we're going to welcome the new Vice Chair Hatley, and I'm the new chair for this meeting, Mr. Thornburg. Yeah. Typo. Carry over from last one. Yes, right. Okay. Mr. Khoury, you're a new commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Welcome to the team. Good. Item C, I'm going to go to oral communications. Are there any speaker slips, Mr. Beck?
No speaker slips? Are you here for any public comments yourself? No. Okay, perfect. None. Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item D, approval of the minutes from July 14th. Are there any motions to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of July 14th.
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, minutes are approved. Consent items? None. Move on to item F, new business. There is a proposal for an all-way stop at Decatur Way and Escondido Boulevard North. Staff, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ed Alberto, City Traffic Engineer. So we have a resident request for an always stop at the intersection of Escondido Boulevard and Decatur Way. Here on the left, you can see the intersection is located just east of Center City Parkway, south of El Norte Parkway, and north of Highway 78. And on the right side, you can see a blown-up aerial of the intersection. So when looking at always stops, staff refers to the California Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices for guidance, and the California METCD recommends basing always stops on an engineering study considering the following criteria. It being an interim measure to a signal, the collision history, volumes, control of left turns, pedestrian volumes, and visibility. Staff has done an evaluation and feels that this intersection meets the warrants for collision history, to control left turns, pedestrian volumes, and visibility. Looking at the collision history, per the METCD, it recommends if there are 5 or more collisions in the previous 12 months, correctable by the installation of a stop sign, it meets that collision warrant. In the last 12 months, there have been 6 collisions in this intersection. And looking further down at the 5-year history, you can see each year that there are collisions reported at this intersection. In 2019, there were 4 collisions. Staff did look at the collisions in 2020 and 2018 to see if they were within range of 2019, but they're just a little bit out of range. And also, as you can see, in the last 12 months, 4 of the 6 collisions involved left-turning vehicles, and 11 of the 14 collisions in the last 5 years also involved left turns. As far as the volume warrant, major street approaches must average 300 vehicles per hour for any 8 hours in the day. The combined vehicle, bike, and pedestrian volume should average 200 units per hour for the same 8 hours, and control of vehicle pedestrian conflicts near locations that generate high pedestrian volumes. Staff looked at peak hour counts at this intersection, and during the observations, there were 541 vehicles on the major road approaches. During this peak hour, we observed 54 pedestrians crossing this intersection. There is a 7-Eleven at the northwest corner. Lincoln Elementary School is approximately half a mile southeast of the intersection with Escondido High School, approximately 0.67 miles north. There were quite a few students walking to this location, going to the 7-Eleven, then congregating on the sidewalks, and some taking transit home, others getting picked up by a ride, but there was quite a bit of pedestrian activity at this location. With regards to visibility, here's another blow-up of the intersection. North is facing left, so that's Decatur Way with the stop striping on the roadway. South of the intersection, Escondido Boulevard widens, and you can see that previous attempts were made to improve visibility. For this movement, the limit line was moved forward. There's about a 4-foot offset between the north and south curb lines, and there's above-ground utilities behind the 7-Eleven. This is a view from the limit line of a vehicle trying to make a turn onto Escondido Boulevard. You can see the above-ground utilities obstructing visibility. A resident did provide photo evidence of large semi-trucks parking in the red curb, making deliveries at that 7-Eleven. Police department was notified of the times that these deliveries have been occurring, and they've been enforcing the parking restrictions. But as you can see, this grayed out area sort of visualizes the reduced visibility with large vehicles parking in that restricted area. So staff recommends proposing an all-way stop. The apartment complex driveway would be that fourth leg of the intersection that's currently not striped or signed. And our recommendation is to approve staff recommendation to install stop signs on the westbound, northbound, and southbound approaches to the intersection of Escondido Boulevard and Decatur Way to create an all-way stop-controlled intersection, and install all-way plaques to all 4 approaches, and forward the recommendation to City Council to amend the traffic schedule of stop signs per Escondido Municipal Code Section 28-5. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up any questions from any of the commissioners, comments?
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned. I mean, I understand the left turns and everything, and the need for that. I see the truck there, and yeah, I see that's blocked. But stopping 540 vehicles per hour, that's 9 every minute on stop signs, because you said there's 540 vehicles going through there 1 hour.
That's the peak hour.
So that's stopping 540 vehicles per hour. Is that realistic? And does that end up causing more of a traffic jam because we're stopping a lot of cars?
I would say that it creates more traffic congestion. I mean, obviously it does create vehicles to need to stop, but I would say that the safety of that intersection trumps the congestion, I suppose.
The 5 years of accidents, how many of them were resulted in injuries to people?
I don't have that information at this time.
Because if they're all just maybe minor fender benders versus something that someone's getting killed, that makes a big difference.
Typically, the reported collisions from PD involve an injury collision. We have been informed from the residents that made this request that there are several fender bender type collisions where both parties walk away or drive away. However, there have been more than the reported collisions at this intersection.
And we've had one resident ask about this. Have we asked the other residents, because there's an apartment complex there? How do they feel about that? Are they interested in that? I know when we've looked at other issues, Hamilton Lane, I think, is one of them. A lot of times we'll have 1 or 2 people here who are very vocal for it, but then there's 10 people against it.
They did submit a petition in support of this always stop.
Okay. I'm just concerned about, putting a stop sign on Escondido Boulevard there, but.
And at El Norte Parkway, there have been turn restrictions, so it has reduced the volume of traffic traveling down Escondido Boulevard.
If there's cut-through traffic from Decatur up to El Norte to kind of bypass the Center City intersection in either direction, I go there there's an auto body shop I frequent sometimes, but I don't cut through. I'm just curious if staff observed that at all.
We didn't observe the cut-through traffic. The observations were primarily at the intersection.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Add to Bill's concern, he's about over 500 vehicles, during the peak. But then if there's traffic congestion and backup, people tend to reroute. Like if they're using this for a shortcut or a bypass right now, they might reroute and use another road, and maybe the backup won't be as bad. I mean, it's potential, so.
Yes, I was kind of thinking the same thing, yeah. I've just questioned, I was looking at the geometry, and obviously it's kind of, with the driveway, the apartments it's now an offset intersection, right? It doesn't kind of line up, so the stop limit lines on the north side will be a little further back, which sometimes is, again, hard to see a little bit for turning and whatnot, but I guess the angle helps out a little bit. Are there any advanced warning signs, Meredith, do you think? All of a sudden you have a new stop sign, it is a busier road.
Prior to the installation of the stop sign, police department usually puts out a changeable message board notifying residents and the public that it will be an always stop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any more comments? Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the always stop.
Was there a second by Mr. Corey? All right, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Thank you. Motion carries. We have the, comprehensive active transportation strategy. Mr. Williams. Excellent.
Thank you, Commissioners. Craig Williams, Associate Engineer for the city.
Before you start, I'm just reading the report. It says this is just an update, right? There's no action?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
I don't want you to trick us here. Ask for a vote later.
You have a good memory, sir. I want to talk to you today about an upcoming project that we'll be doing. It'll probably involve staff time and your time over a period of maybe 12 to 18 months, I think. So we want to talk to you about a comprehensive active transportation strategy that the city will be undertaking hopefully sometime soon. The goals of that effort are to, as you can read on the screen, but improve the quality of life for our residents, and I'll get into a number of these items a little bit more as we go through it. Improve connections for people of all ages and abilities, and I'll talk more about all ages and abilities because it's a pretty key piece of this whole effort. Improving safety, particularly for those walking, rolling, and biking. The rolling terminology is basically for someone in a wheelchair. So trying to make it safer for all of those folks to be able to get around the city. Fostering a healthier community through boosting activity, creating a more vibrant city, improving the aesthetics of public spaces, improving economic vitality, and integrating those concepts into an updated general plan mobility element. As you know, it's been quite a few years since that's been updated, and part of this effort will involve that update. Some of the vision of CATS is maybe taking a little bit different approach than what you've heard of, but basically, if you've ever heard of the term 8 to 80 cities, it's basically where a city where people the age of 8 to the age of 80 can get around with or without a vehicle. I'll talk more about that in a slide or two, but the idea is that as all of us grow older, which we do every day, or as our parents get older, our grandparents get older, there comes a time where you can't drive anymore, but you don't want to necessarily be stuck in the house. So we want to create a city where people have the opportunity to be able to continue to get around. And I think this key point is, the next point is pretty important. 30% of the population, a third of our population, doesn't drive. Basically, it says that 2/3 of the population does, but it's that 2/3 that are kind of responsible for taking kids around or taking elderly parents or grandparents or yourself some ability to get around the city, and we want to make it easier for those folks to be able to get around the city. This whole concept is that there's over the last 6, 7, 8 years, I've worked with this on a number of different projects, but the idea is that 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds are indicator species. They help us understand what's working in our city and what can be improved. Basically, you're saying that if you build a city where an 8-year-old can get across the street or get down the street or visit their neighbors without the need for a car, and you do the same thing for an 80-year-old who can't drive anymore, but you want to be able to enable them to be able to get around and enjoy an active life and a healthy life. I think it's important to know that, and I know all of you know this, but at least since the 50s, we've largely built our cities around the car. If you go to some of the older cities that were built in the 20s and 30s and 40s, you can still get around pretty well in those cities, and you've got these little pockets of commerce that are placed in order for people to be able to get to them. After the World War II, we started building cities and started truly focusing on cars, and we kind of designed out the ability to walk a lot of places, and we want to kind of be able to retrofit some of that. We want to retrofit neighborhoods to prioritize human interaction, social ability, fostering vibrant streets, great public spaces. I want to say too that Escondido has done a very good job, particularly for our downtown developments, those apartment buildings and residential structures that have been built within the downtown area. The folks that live there don't have to drive as much as people who live out in the suburbs of the city. I live out north of the city, and literally there's not too many places that I can walk to, that I have to get in my car in order to be able to get around. We want to make it easier for people in the city to be able to get around, whether they walk a short distance to a bus or a short distance to an Uber or to some other means of transportation. We want to be able to make it easier for people to drive less if they can and if they want to. And some people don't have a choice. They can't drive. So the other important thing here is ensuring that infrastructure for shops and services is built to accommodate people walking and biking, not just driving and parking. And interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, I was reviewing a project for a new 7-Eleven off of Grand. And looking at that traffic study, there were literally no words in there that talked about the fact that that facility could serve people that walked up to it. That all of the text was centered around driving, where they were going to park, how they were going to get into and out of the parking lot. But there was really nothing that talked about how people might be able to walk to and do whatever they want to do at the 7-Eleven and then walk back home. So we want to be able to, in fact, in a lot of the newer, more recent traffic studies, I've tried to get engineers to think about that those are truly purposes that they want to satisfy. Even a recent Starbucks, I wanted to make sure that they realize that people who live nearby there may actually just want to walk there and get a cup of coffee and walk back home, or go to a nearby store. So some of the key points that I want to cover as part of this CATS, we really want to gather the right kind of information to make data-driven decisions. We've all heard that term, but in this case, it's very, very true. We're going to need to, and we will follow direction from a number of city documents that I'll talk about. We want to establish an implementation plan, a roadmap to identifying what capital improvements we want to do around the city and what programs we might want to get others to help us implement. We'll develop an implementation study or an implementation schedule, as I'll talk about a little bit later. We'll share that RFP schedule with you later on today. And then, very importantly, as we get to the end of this presentation today, I'd like you to be thinking about what kind of feedback you want to give us. We haven't finished. We're about 2/3 of the way through the RFP, so if you have some ideas of things you want us to cover, we'd really like to hear that feedback. So a little more of the background. The Climate Action Plan has some very direct language in there about developing an active transportation plan. As you probably know, if you've looked at this document, the very beginning of the premise aims to address climate change by reducing GHG emissions from activities within the city, identifying threats and strategies for adapting to adverse environmental conditions caused by climate change. The idea that we need to reduce GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, from activities within the city, that is what drove some of the language for developing an active transportation plan as part of this document. I won't even ask you to look at this page on the right-hand side, but that's actually the excerpt that talks about developing an active transportation plan. They want it to include a citywide pedestrian master plan, an update to the city's trails master plan, a safe routes to school plan, a safe routes to transit plan, and then identified priority areas for pedestrian infrastructure improvements in the city, such as priority investment neighborhoods. So there's language in this document that refers to an active transportation plan on page after page after page. And a large part of the RFP is being responsive to that language, but it's also looking a little bit outside the box and how we will want to update the mobility element through a number of changes, hopefully that will make us a little more responsive to multimodal transportation. I don't really need to get into the details of this. I think you can read it fine. One of the things I do want to touch on is that it does talk about a transportation demand management strategies, TDM. It's a buzzword for the last probably 10 years, but basically it's identifying programs that help people make choices at other options other than driving. So it's very consistent with what we're wanting to do with this active transportation plan. I did want to point out too that some of the things that we've been doing over the last number of years are also identified in that document: synchronizing traffic signals, building roundabouts. Basically, it's means of allowing people to continue to drive in a smooth fashion rather than having to stop and then take off and stop and take off. So those are all good, very progressive transportation design elements. We have set aside funds in the last two CIP budgets for this effort. This is actually the language that was in that the last two budget documents. So they've set us in a good position to be able to fund this effort and be able to do it in a fairly comprehensive manner. As I mentioned earlier about collecting data and data-driven decisions, we want to do a number of things that are a little bit non-traditional, at least for what the city's done in the past. We really want to collect information about where people want to go, and we'll do some of that through public outreach, but we'll also do some of that out of the means of collecting some of the mobility information. We want to look at potential routes and then barriers for getting there. Pretend for a second that you live on the west side of I-15 and you want to go someplace on the east side of I-15. Well, there aren't a whole lot of choices of how to get underneath I-15. We're not pretending that we're going to punch a hole through the base of the road, but we want to make it easier for people to make that choice if they want to do that. We already have a lot of really good information that we've collected over the last year or so with the local road safety plan for crash data, so we're in good position there. We want to take advantage of some newer technology called mobility analytics. I don't know if you've seen it, but basically it collects cell phone data, GPS data that tracks basically how people that are anonymized travel from one point of the city to another point of the city. And we can use that in a number of different ways. We can compare that with known traffic volumes, and then we can use that to accurately estimate what actual volumes are on the roads, because it literally shows the number of trips that are showing up on those roads through these little green lines. But we can also compare that with other traffic volume, and we can kind of normalize that. It also gives us information about how long it takes for somebody to make that trip, not just that they made it, but how long it took. It allows us to look at congestion in certain functions. So there's a whole lot of things that we can do with this, and we can use it for other tasks besides just this plan. And then I do want to say that a large part of this is all going to be GIS collections, data on origins and destinations. You know, where are the schools? Where are the parks? Where do people live? Where are the community centers? Where are the downtown areas? And we can even use this mobility analytics to look at how people walk or bike relative to how fast they're going. It's that clever. Public outreach is certainly going to be another element that we want to take advantage of. We plan to do in-person discussions, roundtable meetings. We'll do a fair amount of social media outreach. We'll work closely with our communications department and take advantage of their Instagram account and their Facebook accounts and Twitter. We'll also be looking at sharing information with people through this web-based tool. I'll give you a quick little demonstration. Takes 20 seconds or so. Interestingly, this is a tool that I've used on various projects over the last 8 or 10 years, but it allows you to give people a pretty good idea of what you're trying to do. It would be located on the city's website, and then it would be a link to this kind of stuff. Gives you kind of a welcome page. Says, hey, you know, nice to see you. Gives you an opportunity to put in different information about the project. You can add in maps of the study area. You can go to the next page and look and get some information about how people view different elements of the effort, the plan. Which say, for example, that someone might say, you know, safety and security is by far the most important thing that I think comes out of this. Mobility and accessibility, that's pretty high on my list too. I think economic vitality is pretty good too, but I still think safety and security, I'm going to leave that up here. So it gives us a really good opportunity to reach out to people in a way that we haven't been able to in the past. Again, gives us an opportunity to look at some different ways to collect information and how they can even prioritize how money is spent in investing priorities. It gives us an opportunity to look at, provide them a map where they can identify where certain elements are and how they want to get around the city, and then gives us a little bit of opportunity to gather their name and whether they want to stay connected. And so we can, if we have a public meeting, a face-to-face meeting, we can share that information with them. But it's a very, very cool tool, very helpful. We hope to be able to take advantage of that. Next slide. A little bit about the active transportation strategy. I mentioned earlier about developing this roadmap for an 8 to 80 city. We would have, and again, according to the CAP, we'd be looking at individual chapters for trails, another chapter for transit, schools, because partly the CAP, Climate Action Plan, directs us to do that. We'd be looking at safe routes to school, safe routes to parks, whole kind of system. We really want to identify some sort of grid system of bikeable and walkable streets. If you ever heard the term, not my favorite term, but it's valid, not all modes on all roads. It gives us an opportunity to say, maybe there are some roads that are truly devoted to cars and minimal accommodation for pedestrians or bikes. But there are other roads that we want to minimize the use of cars, and we want to dedicate more of those kinds of roads toward biking and walking. Those are sometimes called bike boulevards or green streets. And I think it's another thing that some of our city leadership has talked about is creating a series of green streets around the city. So I think there's some synergy there that'll work pretty well. And another item that I want to say is encouraging active transportation and transit use. And I want to say that a lot of times, if you think about people riding a bike to some destination, but yet where they want to go is 10 miles away, it's always very possible for someone, every bus we have in the city, every bus in the region has a bike rack on the front of it. So someone can ride a bike for a mile, put their bike on the front of a bus and take that bus for an 8-mile bus ride, get off the bike and then ride the last mile to wherever they want to go, to a community center or their office. So we want to be able to enable people to realize that that's even a possibility, because I think a lot of people don't recognize that. There's another term that may be new to all of you, it's certainly new to me not more than a year ago. This term of flexible fleets. They provide mobility options, vehicles to all types of trips. And then we also want to develop this implementation plan. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Flexible fleets are called flexible because each kind of vehicle kind of serves a separate sort of purpose. We see pictures here of a bus, which we're all very familiar with. But buses don't have the opportunity to serve all the trips that people might want to take. We see here an electric shuttle bus, smaller bus, but it might work within a corporate campus. It might work in the downtown area of Escondido. It might work in a neighborhood. Again, where a bus may not work, and you don't need a 60-person bus in order to shuffle around 6 different people. It also includes things like micro-mobility. Those would be bike share, it might be scooter share, things like that. Ride share, we're all very familiar with, carpool vans, things like that. Ride hailing, that's Lyft and Uber, and also even last mile delivery. You look at this UPS truck. Everything that went onto that UPS truck got to that truck through quite a large, 18-wheeler, but those last mile deliveries are done by smaller and smaller vehicle. That's where the term flexible fleets comes from. The other thing that you may have heard about that we feel like has a real possibility here are mobility hubs. They include a lot of different elements, a kind of a concentration of a variety of transportation resources. You might look at the Escondido Transit Center and envision some of these additional features being located there. It's kind of hard to see this map, so I blew it up a little bit over here. But you have things like bike share and car share and scooter share. You've got scooters right here, you've got on-demand ride share, these items here, wireless EV charging, neighborhood electric vehicles. So it's an ability to concentrate a lot of these facilities where someone might come in on a train like they do here, but let's just say that they don't necessarily want to take a taxi. Maybe they want to just pick up a bike and ride the last 2 miles, or they want to pick up a scooter, or they need to be able to rent a car and go a few more miles. So it's a concentration of efforts in a mobility hub. Some of the other things that will be part of this mobility element, again, we're moving a little bit away from the active transportation items, and then we're looking more at our current circulation element and what kind of changes we would need to make to that circulation element to make it more multimodal. One of the things that we want to look at is this ability to analyze our street network to right-size streets. All of you probably recognize that we have streets that are oversaturated with traffic, and we have other streets that are undersaturated. Say we've got a 3-lane section, say Valley or East 2nd Street, that maybe it doesn't need 3 lanes to support the amount of traffic it has there. We'll be looking at all of those roads, analyzing how much traffic they have on them, how many lanes they have on them, see if there are opportunities to rethink how that space is used. Another thing we want to do is, it's interesting in the circulation element, we don't really talk much about residential zones. We have street sections for new developments that are pretty wide, and as a result, the width kind of encourages people to drive fast. And we get a lot of complaints in newer subdivisions because the streets are so wide and there isn't much friction to slow people down. We want to take a look at those cross sections that we have now and to see if there's a reason to perhaps redesign those to make traffic drive a little closer to the actual speed limit in residential areas, which should be either 25 or 30 miles an hour. Here's actually a map of the 2014 circulation element. I won't dive into this too deep, but I want to point out a couple of examples. This is Valley City Road that actually goes through the center of the city and then goes into Del Dios, same road. Another one I'll point out a little bit is San Pasqual Valley is Route 78 goes up through the center of the city, and then it turns into 78 out to Oceanside. It's interesting to see how those roads, that same road changes from the outskirts of the city to the inner part of the city. Valley Parkway, for example, starts out as a super major road on Del Dios. And then somewhere it changes into a major road, and then it changes into a prime arterial as it gets around I-15, changes to a collector, changes to a major, back to another major road, then to a prime, and then to a super prime, which is Valley Center. So and you can see these cross sections here. We have a prime arterial, as I mentioned earlier, a major road here. Then we go into a collector street cross section and then a local collector street cross section. One of the things I want to point out is that some of these roads go into, as I mentioned, the downtown area of the city where a lot of people walk, a lot of people could bike, but they're crossing the street and they're walking along the street. We want to look at these cross sections and say, are there places here where we ought to provide wider sidewalks or wider bikeways? As you know, we've already started implementing some buffered bike lanes, but yet those buffered bike lanes aren't reflected in these cross sections in the circulation element. And we need to be able to add those so that developers are clear that that's an option that they need to be considering. So those are some of the concepts that we're working on. Very briefly here, these are actually called street typologies, and I want to share a couple of them, this very large commuter street. Think of Center City Parkway. This is kind of what Center City Parkway might look like as it comes into the city, off of I-15 from the south, off of I-15 to the north. As it changes into more of a commercial area, as we get down to Mission or as we get down to Washington, the street really needs to change because there are different users in that context. And then in some cases, it might even change to a bus priority road or a bike priority road. I'm not saying that Center City Parkway would change along these orders, but these are the different kinds of cross-sections that we might consider based on the context of that road within the city itself and the kind of users that are in that vicinity.
Quick question on that.
Sure.
Is that even possible with Center City with the unposted speed limits we have? I don't know if is it possible to bring it down to a 35 mile an hour
That's
speed
certainly
limit?
something that what we will be looking into as part of this effort, what the speed limits are. We are aware that some folks have asked that question over the last year, and I do think that we'll be taking a look at it, so.
The speed limit on Center City, if I'm not mistaken, is 65.
65,
And
right.
has to be by federal law or whatever, or there's a reason we've got 65. And can we actually knock it down to 35 as is shown in those examples?
35 is probably a little too low.
But that's what the examples was showing, typical speed limit would be 35.
I think that, and this is just totally an aside, if you were to actually measure speeds on Center City Parkway now, you'd probably find, at least in the center part of the city, they're closer to 40, 45. So people really, and in fact, our signals are synchronized so that they will somewhat be forced to go 40, 45 miles an hour, 45, because if they're doing 65, they're going to stop at every signal. So we can control that to some degree with coordination. So, and this is actually the last slide. You'll probably be happy to see that. But I do want to say that one of the things we want to look at with the help of the consultant is really reviewing and evaluating the various design guides that we use. We have the City of Escondido, we have San Diego Regional Standards, we have Caltrans Standards, we have the MUTCD, we have the NACTO, we have AASHTO guides. In a lot of cases, there are designs in those documents that can work better in a number of cases in the city. We want to be able to identify those and make it easier for us to be able to flag those and really give direction to a developer that that's the design standard that we want to use for certain kinds of situations. We also want them to look at some of our policies. We do have some pedestrian policies that are a little bit somewhat relics that need to be updated. And then we're really not sure how we're going to do this, but at a minimum, we want to provide links to be helpful links to developers so that we don't have to deal with design changes on a case-by-case basis. It's a great opportunity to do that, and we'll hope to be able to take advantage of that at this time. Timing-wise, we really plan to issue the request for proposals by the end of the year. So we have about 2.5 months to do that. We'll come back to you in January and hopefully report on how many responses we got and perhaps the consultant selection. Maybe not consultant selection by January because it might be a little too early. Depends on when it actually goes out. Today's opportunity was literally to give you an idea of what we were thinking about and to take any kind of feedback that you had for us on some of what we've presented. So we're actually at that point. So if you have some feedback, we'll be happy to hear it.
Commissioners, any feedback or questions, comments? There's a lot here. It sounds like we were talking to Sandag, but that's okay.
Yeah, I have a few. I know this concerns the school district, which is outside of our scope, I'm sure. But I'm sure everybody's noticed that ever since they stopped using school buses and every parent takes their child to school in their own individual car, it's just traffic. I mean, just the traffic is just exponential. I mean, we had COVID and kids were staying at home. There was like no traffic at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and now it's just back to usual, and it's exponential. So, I mean, we're talking about getting people to, use, like to walk and bike and alternate transportation. If we could get school buses back as some kind of usable transportation for our children, that would be huge. I mean, that would just cut down tremendous on traffic, vehicle emissions, whatever you want to call it. So I just want to throw that out there because that always comes to mind, being a child of the school bus era myself, that they disappeared. And then I just would like to say we really do need to work on the signals and make them a priority. The synchronized traffic signals, I know they work sometimes, I guess, better maybe like on a square block type system, but Escondido is not all laid out like in a square block grid pattern. But then we need to make sure like the pressure plates or the sensors that are under the road, are feeling the vehicles and allowing vehicles to go. Like for instance, there's a newer signal at El Norte and Fig. And if you're westbound in El Norte in the left turn pocket to go southbound on Fig, sometimes you wait there at least a minute. No, minute doesn't seem like a long time, but it is a long time. You wait there at least a minute. There's no traffic coming eastbound on El Norte, and the light's not changing. And sometimes you have to wait until Fig traffic actually proceeds for that one to be tripped. So I mean, we just went around to every single signal and kind of saw what its idiosyncrasies were and how timely it was operating. That would be huge right there, just to save on gas, save on people's time, as far as that goes. So, but anyways, that's really all I have to add right now on that.
If I could, Ed, do you want to mention something about the signal communications plan we're doing that might address some of that?
Thanks. Yes, we're currently in the process of creating a traffic signal communications master plan. We have a consultant on board. It's through that highway safety improvement grant funding that we obtained. And we're looking to strategize how we're going to roll out improved communications, new signal controller, more responsive detection throughout the city. But if there's specific signal locations, feel free to reach out to us. We can reach out to our signal maintenance team to have them take a look at the detection out there.
Any more comments, commissioners?
Yes, not really directly to this, but related. We do actually have some new school buses on the high school district, and they are electric buses too.
Oh.
We've got half a dozen new electric buses that we got on grants.
They have buses. They're after-school activity buses, but for the high schools. Comments? I had a couple comments. I didn't see in what you're proposing. I kind of was intrigued by the idea of updating the bicycle master plan, the pedestrian plans. Obviously the whole plan overall is a good concept, but with these are kind of long-term goals, and so with that we need good planning because increasing active transportation isn't going to happen overnight. I mean, we're a very spread out city, right? So some of this you need more density, and you need a plan where you're going to have your active transportation corridors. And I think that's very important. Just because we put a Class 2 bikeway on Center City Parkway doesn't mean people are going to ride their bike on Center City Parkway. I mean, it's a busy street. You mentioned all these corridors going east-west and north-south, and there's one freeway through town. It goes north-south. East-west, you've got these extremely busy streets, and they're all signalized. It takes a long time to get through town. So I was curious if we're not going to update that bicycle master plan, looking at kind of, really good, robust bicycle facilities, not just a Class 2 bikeway, but, trails or, Class 1 bikeways, things like that. I think not only can they help with the strategy, but they also provide a lot of recreational activities for citizens. And I think those are, you get a lot of, if you want to attract the 8 to 80 crowd, you're going to get a lot of money, a lot of, strength and usership if you have a really good facility. They're harder to do, but it's something to look into. So were you not looking at the bicycle master plan, updating that with this first round, or no?
Oh, no, actually, you know, if I left that out, it wasn't intentional.
Okay, I didn't see it. Yeah.
Part of it as
Okay,
well.
okay, good.
So it's a good opportunity to do it all together.
Right.
You know, because a lot of times, you know, a pedestrian master plan will include a lot of the trails. And I do want to say that the fact that we have the Escondido Creek Trail is an amazing facility. I wish more people used it. I wish that hopefully we can identify some improvements that can make it or to encourage more people to use it. We don't really have any north-south facilities that are the same equivalent. We'd like to be able to identify some of those, and I'm totally on board with what you say. You know, you don't want a class 2, a bike lane on Center City Parkway. If you're going to do something like that, you're fortunate you've got a right-of-way that you might be able to build a class 1, kind of a separated facility. You might be able to build a class 4, you know, that's actually separated from traffic. We'll be looking at things like that. So, and hopefully we can get some grid system where you've got, you know, reasonable spacing, where you've got some high-level facilities every mile or so, and then in perhaps class 2, you know, every half mile, something like that. So, yeah.
Excellent. No more comments? Then thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
The next order of business is old business. Is there a update on the project status report by staff?
Good afternoon again. Okay, so project status update report. I was going to start this off and provide an update. At the end of August, Interim Police Chief David Kramer and myself provided a transportation safety update to City Council, and I was going to provide you guys a summarized PowerPoint of what we presented to Council. So we started off informing them of the correlation between speed and safety, with speeding being the leading cause of fatal car collisions in the United States, and aggressive driving causing over 50% of the collisions in the country. And also this figure which you may have seen before with the correlation between speed and pedestrian survivability. Obviously with the vehicle traveling at a greater speed, the survivability of a pedestrian greatly decreases. Last May, an article came out that identified or informed us that there's been a 10.5% jump in fatalities nationwide. This is the largest increase in fatalities since data collection on roadways has been collected in 1975, which equates to about 118 people passing away on U.S. roadways every day last year. State traffic safety officials blamed the increase in fatalities due to dangerous behavior such as speeding, driving under the influence, and distracted driving, as well as roads being designed for speed rather than safety. San Diego Sheriff's Department provided some statistics with regards to blood alcohol concentration trends. Blood alcohol concentrations have been increasing over the years. This data is from through June of 2022, and these samples were collected after the arrest for driving under the influence. And all of the tested samples included typically at least one additional drug, most commonly being THC. And you can see there was a large spike in the alcohol concentrations between 2019 and 2020, coinciding with COVID. We updated our Escondido collision statistics to include 2021 data. The crash type, cause, and severity of collisions really didn't change with this updated data. Looking at collision trends over the last 6 years, again updating with 2021. Our total crashes, our trend line seems about steady. Our total injury collisions seem to be decreasing, but in 2021, consistent with nationwide trends, we had 14 fatal crashes in the city of Escondido. We compared the first half of 2021 to the first half of 2022. We see there's been more total injury collisions, more total crashes, and this could be attributed to post-pandemic, more people driving. However, in 2022, we have seen fewer fatal crashes compared to the same time last year. By June of last year, there were 8 fatal collisions. This time in 2022, there were 5. Prior to this meeting, I checked the collision data to date, and there have been 6 fatal collisions in the city of Escondido in 2022 so far.
Question, I know like Carlsbad has a bicycle emergency, and there's this thing that I call it the rise of e-bikes. And, they kind of generate new users and they go faster. And you see people driving e-bikes and they don't obey any traffic rules. I haven't seen a lot in Escondido. Just curious, have you seen any, or is there any?
We haven't observed any changes in at least collisions,
Right.
With regards to e-bikes or bikes, and the police department hasn't really classified bike collisions with e-bikes versus regular bikes.
Probably be the same data.
But I have driven through Carlsbad and seen the high e-bike ownership per capita.
Yeah, and it could be pricing because it's kind of a new thing, so they're probably more expensive. But as they produce more, costs will go down, they'd be more affordable.
And I have seen their high school students
Right.
at their bell time.
I've seen the same, Carlsbad and Encinitas, full
Yeah,
of
it'll
e-bikes.
come here because I think a lot of those
On the
kids
way.
ride their bike to school and they're e-bikes now, and so.
They're on the way, and I see them picking up here too, so it's gonna be dangerous.
Yeah.
As technology advances and prices go down, I'm sure in the future we'll start to see that trend moving this way, which correlates to our comprehensive active transportation strategy to plan for that future.
May I add one more thing on that? Electric skateboards. That's all I have to say about that.
Thanks.
Say, I was at UCSD yesterday looking at some things, and they're back to full swing now. And they have the new kind of separated bikeway, but just e-bikes, skateboards, scooters. It was crazy. I was like, wow, I don't know how they don't crash all the time. I couldn't believe it. But that's what happens. Sorry, continue.
Moving forward, we presented to City Council an update on our traffic signal priority list. Rock Springs Road and Lincoln Avenue is being constructed and in design right now by a developer-driven project. We're still looking for a future project to signalize Harding, Lincoln, and Lomas Serenas and Villa Rancho Parkway. With regards to our left turn phasing projects, Bear Valley Mary Lane and Juniper and Felicita are currently in the construction phase. We're currently in the design phase for Washington and Rose Street. All of the other left turn phasing projects, we have applied for Highway Safety Improvement Grant funding to fund the remaining signals on that list. We updated council on our traffic management project list and the different areas that we have touched over the last 2 cycles based on recommendations from this commission, Mission Middle School, Oak Hill Elementary School, Rady Creek Elementary School. We're designing Felicita Avenue in Montview, Hidden Valley Middle School, Vista Avenue in McGeary, and Felicita Elementary School. Again, we applied for $3.7 million in Highway Safety Improvement Grant funding for improvements at 22 intersections. We submitted our grant application in September, and we just heard back yesterday that we'll find out in December. The state should be making an announcement as to the results of the grant applications. So in January, we'll be able to give you an update on the status of those grants. We also applied for a new federally funded program called Safe Streets for All, applying for $1.7 million in grant funding to signalize the intersection of Center City Parkway and Brotherton Road. And along with that effort, we would be making changes to the movements at Escondido and Center City Parkway. Over the last fiscal year, staff logged over 350 service requests, which we responded to each of those. We were able to satisfy many of them through education and enforcement efforts. We issued work orders for 39 locations, mainly for parking restrictions, increased visibility using red curb, and delineator replacement. The photo in the picture here is our data collection device called the Armadillo, which we hang on existing streetlights that collect speed and volume data. We also installed red light violator detection units at Washington and Rose, or as the industry calls them, rat lights. Lieutenant Walters had informed us hours after this installation. He issued 3 citations for red light runners at this intersection. So they do help out the police department in observing the intersection, be able to see that the light is red when vehicles enter the intersection. There are plans to obtain about 15 more units through grant funding, and staff will work with the police department to determine the most effective locations for those installations. Chief Kramer provided an update on education enforcement efforts through their Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Office of Traffic Safety Grant Program. They've conducted bike rodeos, handed out safety equipment, and given presentations to schools and community organizations. The police department is also placing the radar speed trailer out in coordination with staff's efforts and calls for speeding enforcement, and also advertising their Go Slow in ESCO campaign. Also, they beefed up their social media presence with various slides, reminding everyone to go slow in ESCO. We also provided a QR code for the public to download the Reported app so that they can better, more easily communicate to staff locations around the city where they may observe some issues. So with that, I'll hand it over to Verpi to finish off with project updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Virpi Kukkaruotsalainen. I'm Associate Traffic Engineer here with the city, and I'm going to wrap up this item G project updates. With our traffic management project list, this is for the fiscal year 21-22. We're moving forward. We already were able to install the accessible pedestrian signals at Valley Parkway and North Broadway, and at Grand Avenue and Midway Drive. You can see the picture on the left. At Oak Hill Elementary School, at the school frontage, the ramp and sidewalk is already constructed. In the picture, it's still under construction, but it was completed a few days ago. And also at Mission Middle School, the foundations were poured already for the flashing beacons and the radar speed feedback sign poles. And we are anticipating installation next week or a week after. We're hoping next week. With the Grand Avenue Vision Project, the phase one is now completed. We have the new string lighting from Maple Street to Kalmia, and the sidewalk was widened on the north side of Grand Avenue from Maple Street to Broadway. And on the left, you can see what Grand Avenue looked like in February, and now in October, it's nice and complete. With Grand Avenue Vision Project Phase 1, we modified the lane configuration, so we now have one vehicle travel lane for each direction. We also changed the parking. We have diagonal parking now, which increased the number of parking spaces between Maple and Kalmia. And just a reminder that the new speed limit signs will be posted soon for the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit for the business activity district between Center City Parkway and Juniper Street. The next phase of the Grand Avenue Vision Project, Phase 2, is going to widen the sidewalk on both sides of Grand Avenue from Maple to Juniper. We're going to install railing to separate the permanent outdoor dining areas from the walkway. Most exciting to our traffic folks is the new traffic circle that's going to be at the intersection of Grand Avenue and North Broadway. This project design phase was previously awarded to Kimley Horn and Associates, and the design has kicked off. The public meetings will
Quick
be...
question, do you know, I just saw the railings, like do the business owners install the railings or the city does it? It's city right of way, right? But and it doesn't matter unless you...
That I'm not sure of. I'm not sure. I just know that it's
It's okay.
part of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, how do you decide, who gets a, Sawa Cafe and who doesn't? Maybe they don't want one, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes, Commissioner Thornburg. Julie Procopio, City Engineer. Thanks so much for your question.
Yeah.
So we received a grant to build for Phase 1, and we also have a grant for Phase 2, so that's very exciting. And we will be installing the fencing. We worked very closely with Phase 1 with each of the businesses to lay out their fencing, ensure that, you know, we provided them with what they wanted. At the beginning of the project, we didn't have a lot of interest because it was kind of the very beginning before the pandemic in outdoor dining, but by the end of our design phase and during the pandemic, we had obviously a huge increase in that desire, and so businesses like Philippi's, who didn't expect to have any outdoor dining space, have now asked for fencing, and we've had that installed, and so I think they've got some plans to make some adjustments to their building to support some tables outside and how they'll serve those customers. So we'll do the same with Phase 2. We'll work with each of the individual businesses, lay out the fencing, accommodate what we can. We purposely chose fencing that was easy to get so that as businesses evolve in the future, if someone wants to open up a restaurant, then they can easily find some matching fencing and add that to the space out there.
Good.
So.
I was kind of thinking that because business uses change, so you could have something that's a, sewing machine shop, but someday wants to be a restaurant, and so.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah. Can you put it in now? Anyway,
Yeah,
good.
although what I've heard is that from our economic development team, that a lot of times because of the investment that it takes to make a restaurant operate, the pre-treatment and all the health code requirements, that a lot of times once a building is retrofit to accommodate a restaurant, it doesn't go back from there. And so obviously we'll see what happens. But yeah, the fencing is mobile or it can be taken out in the future if it needs to, and we can add more if we get more businesses that want that.
Yeah, looks great.
Great.
Julie, while you're up here, jumping back to just a quick question about the Grand Avenue, the string lighting that's up.
Yes.
If we had an update on, because I know we were waiting on SDG&E to power it up, or what's...
We actually have our meter, and so an event is being planned.
Okay.
I believe that they are hoping to coincide the lighting ceremony with Small Business Saturday, which is a great event in downtown Escondido. But we wanted to do something. It was ready right at about the very end of Cruising Grand. Okay. But we, wanted to do something, and the businesses wanted to do something very intentional about that. But we did. We ordered those lights in advance, and so we had those light posts because we knew that furnishing those would take many, many months, and so we were on that. What we didn't expect was that the meter pedestal was delayed for like 6 months. And so this is just basically a cabinet that the meter sits in. And you would think those would be easy to find, but during the pandemic, supply chain issues happened, and those were things that we just couldn't get, and we tried to use one we had in the yard, and so anyways, that's what's resulted in the delay. You could see the lights have been up for some time. We were waiting on that pedestal, and then of course there were some challenges getting the meter itself set, but it's ready to turn on and it works, but we're going to do it in a very special time, so I hope you all will be able to come and enjoy that. It'll be really nice when it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So I was saying public meetings will be held with stakeholders, businesses, and the community during the design process. So we will get more information in the upcoming months. The next project is the Citrocado Extension Project. You've seen this slide before. This is just a reminder that the project fills the gap between Harmony Grove Village Parkway and Andreasen Drive. Will widen the Citrocado Parkway between Valley Parkway and Avenida del Diablo. This then provides improved access to the hospital and also creates a southern access to the planned industrial park. And with this project, we are constructing a bridge over Escondido Creek and sound walls on both sides of streets. We will be adding 2 new traffic signals and we'll be modifying 2 existing signals.
While we're on that one, I live in that area. That construction has started now, and it's going to go on for quite a long time on Citrocado.
The side of Citricado that I'm on, I guess you'll call it the eastbound side or the east side from Valley Parkway, that has now had the center lane, which was a straight-through lane, closed. And the right turn lane has become a right turn and straight through. That poses a problem during the day because when school lets out, that light allows about 4 or 5 cars to go through. And now with 2 lanes of traffic into 1, it takes about twice as long for cars to get through. If something can be done on the light to make it run a little bit better, it's something that I think needs to be looked at school, when school lets out. If someone could put some eyeballs on that, because there's a lot of traffic down there and backs up well past the neighborhood street, what is it, Mesa Grande or something, I think is the first block, and it goes up the hill quite a bit. I mean, I've seen 30 or 40 cars lined up there trying to get out.
Okay, yeah, thank you for letting us know. We'll take a look. Haven't received.
So no right on red.
Yes.
So with no right on red and you can't go forward and you can't go right, it just stops everything.
Okay, yeah, we will evaluate that for sure. So, so I wanted to show you these exciting pictures of that project that you mentioned. So construction on the project began on September 6th, and these pictures were taken on October 7th, so we're moving along nicely. You can see that the center median has been removed, the picture over here on the left. It has been removed, and then it's going to be reconstructed with the new configuration. And these other pictures, they really show the alignment of the new segment of the parkway. I think they were exciting drone pictures. Here on the right, you can see that this here is the creek diversion, the new creek pathway. So for this project, we do have an outreach team. So if you or anyone you know, public, has questions or concerns about the project, we advise them to contact the outreach team directly. They have a project helpline, and they also have an email. And project updates are posted on the city website. Then with our 7 Creek Crossings project, this is the project that improves the 7 crossings along the creek pathway. Construction is moving forward. The picture on the right is taken on October 11th at Juniper Crossing. So the new ramps have been constructed at 4 locations, Juniper, Hickory, Fig, and Rose, and the crossings are open for use right now. During the next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on Citrus Avenue. The work is going to be, work includes the sidewalk demolition and pour-back on the east side of Citrus near Wanek Road. But the bike path will remain open during this work. And thank you. That completes the updates. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, commissioners? No? Okay. Thank you, VRP.
Thank you.
Next is item H, which is school area safety. Is there Mr. Beck?
Yeah, I can read this. Yeah, so I'll just be reading the school area safety and then also the council action. So I'll just kind of run through this for you guys. First, the school area safety crosswalk improvements currently in construction at Mission Middle School include signage and striping, rectangular rapid flashing beacons and radar speed feedback signs. Crosswalk improvements in construction at Oak Hill Elementary include a new pedestrian ramp, enhanced signage and striping, and high visibility continental crosswalk markings. Before I proceed to the others, any questions? I don't have any answers, but any questions for the staff on that? All right, none. I'll carry on to the council action. As was previously mentioned by Ed and Verpy, on August 24th, the City Council received a presentation, held a workshop to discuss transportation activity. They also adopted a resolution authorizing an application to the Department of Transportation for the Safe Streets for All program. In addition, they adopted an ordinance retaining the existing speed limits on several roadways in accordance with the California Vehicle Code And they also adopted a resolution amending the traffic schedule to reflect a reduction in speed limit on Chestnut Street between Juniper and 5th, on North Broadway between Rincon and Country Club Lane and Jesmondine Road. And they also adopted an ordinance to determine Grand Avenue from Center City Parkway to South Juniper Street as a small business activity district and declare the prima facie speed limits 25 miles per hour. And as Ed mentioned, those signs will be going up shortly. Then on the 14th, they adopted a resolution to award a contract for the Bear Valley Parkway and Mary Lane traffic signal modification construction project. And that is something that's going to be moving forward, about $327,000. The last item, item number 7, just for everyone's edification, that has moved forward and been pushed to a later council date for the actual bid award for Juniper Elementary. So that's going to come to the council either end of October or November. So that's everything on those items.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Next, we have oral communications. I see no members of the public. We should advertise next meeting. Maybe free ice cream. Item K, Transportation Commissioners. Any questions or comments? Any new items you want to bring up?
I was just going to say one quick thing, looking at all the city council business, which was a lot. Is that just in, I know it had mentioned for when you did the presentation in the workshop that y'all, city council had asked you to do that kind of every year to give an update. And I just wondered if in the future the commission could get a heads up when that's going to happen, just so if in case we want to be in attendance. I appreciate the report afterwards, but also something we might like to be in person for.
Commissioner Casma, if I might add to that, Ed, and I haven't talked to staff for the Transportation Commission, but one of the policies the council's adopted is they're going to want an annual report from all of the various commissions. So there will be an opportunity not only for city staff, but also for the commission to make a presentation sometime in 2023. So we'll coordinate the date on that as well.
Any more commissioner communications? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Mr. Corey? Second?
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.